So we have big news coming out of Mamelodi Sundowns this afternoon. They've made a coaching change and announced a new head coach. Now there's so many things that we can speak about in this thing and where Mamelodi Sundowns goes and what does this mean. But let me first start off with the news as it is, then we'll get into my thoughts about the move. Now, a 52-year-old Miguel Cardoso, Portuguese, has been announced as the head coach of Mamelodi Sundowns. He takes over from coach Manqoba, who was the head coach, having taken over from coach Rulani before the season started. This coach has coached teams like AEK Athens. He's been an assistant at Shakhtar Donetsk. He's coached French team FC Nantes. He's gone through Celta Vigo, Rio Ave, and more importantly, he was coach of Esperance, ES Tunis, from January this year. And he was the coach that knocked Mamelodi Sundowns out of the Champions League last season. Couldn't get over the line to win the Champions League, but he has CAF experience at least at a very big club. Now, he comes in with 3 assistants. You have Fabio Fernandez, you have Pedro Acevedo, and you have João Araújo who are coming in with him. What does this mean now for the technical team that was there? Now, we know that Coach Manqoba is gone. Then we speak about Coach Wendell, who's also gone. Those 2 coaches that have been around with Coach Pitso. So Coach Wendell and Coach Manqoba actually have Champions League medals with them. That is how long they have been with Mamelodi Sundowns and have been servants of Mamelodi Sundowns. Then Romain Foltz, somebody who joined at the beginning of the season, is now also out. He, of course, joined after Amazulu and other things that he had done on the continent, but now he is also out. The only 2 that are going to be remaining is Coach Steve Kompela, one of the 3 wise men when there was still the 3 of them together, and then Coach Kennedy Moene, former goalkeeper for Mamelodi Sundowns, who came into the technical team, I believe it was last year with Coach Rulani when he was making those changes. Those are the 2 staff members on the technical team that still retain a part of this technical team, and I think Coach Steve is going to become a lot like Umandla Ngigazi, a coach that helps that helps Coach Cardoso navigate South African football and South African players and all of that stuff. So those are the changes that have been made on that side. Now we get into the exciting part. What does this mean for Mamelodi Sundowns? There's 2 major things that have happened here with this change. Number 1, Miguel Cardoso becomes the first non-South African, non-black coach to take over as head coach since 2012 when Coach Pitso came in. Coach Cardoso is going to have to come in and adapt to the South African game, but also deal with some of the previous promises that Mamelodi Sundowns had made. If you think about the commitment to South African coaches and South African development, that is starting to shift a little bit, and you can start to see where Sundowns might be heading. I said at the beginning of last season, I said in videos last season that Mamelodi Sundowns is coming to a crossroads where they'll have to decide whether they stay with the family type of team that they had built up, where coaches get to speak directly to the chairman, where the changes happen from the ground up, to then having to change to a sporting director, right? Part of these international changes is that Coach Fleming, sporting director Fleming Berg is now clearly steering the ship. They've now started getting in internationals in terms of signings. When you look at Bo Allende, Bo Ribeiro, Bo Sales, those type of signings. And now you're seeing a technical team that is non-South African take the helm. And that may have a lot of things that is said. But then, more importantly, I think we're going to see a more corporate Mamelodi Sundowns, or more business-like Mamelodi Sundowns. A Sundowns where everybody are hired guns. They're hired guns. Firstly, there's going to be a separation for sure between Chairman Klopi and the SD and everybody else. So the SD is now going to be the head of what happens at the club. And already Fleming Berg has made a couple of changes structurally to the club. We'll get into that later. But I think we're going to see a lot more ruthless movement from Sundowns. So coaches are no longer people that are going to be in for a very long time. You're going to come in, you're going to have to do the job or leave. I think Fleming himself might start being looked at a little bit more strongly by the board, by Chairman Klopi, in order of what they're doing, man, with Mamelodi Sundowns. So those 2 changes are very important. What's also interesting is that not only is the club changing in terms of its structure and how it's run, I think Chairman Klopi is now taking the club and making it his own and kind of getting away from his father's way of running things and also out of that shadow of what Dr. Patrice Motsepe had created. So now Klopi is building Mamelodi Sundowns in his image. Like I said, you've seen the structural changes, you've seen it become more European, you've seen it maybe become more ruthless with some of the statements that they put out when Coach Rulani was moved on. But also, I think we're going to see Mamelodi Sundowns become a team that looks more like an Ahly. Ahly doesn't have emotional ties. They move people along a lot. And there's a high focus on winning the Champions League, on success. So, whereas the Champions League seemed to be something that Mamelodi Sundowns really wanted, but it wasn't a do or die, we live and breathe this thing. Now, Sundowns is going to be moving there. And what's going to be interesting is how many moving pieces we're going to see over the next couple of years. Guys, Sundowns is moving into a very different place. They've never been here. They've never been without a coach that has been at the helm for more than 7 years, 8 years. Coach Manqoba had been there since 2012. Coach Rulani had been in and out, had to leave, left and went to Pirates for a little bit, came back for around 6 or 7 years. So it's the first time they're going to be moving to a coach that doesn't have the ethos of Mamelodi Sundowns. And what does that mean for Shushan and Piano going forward? Because those guys had been the guys that were holding it together. Even when Mamelodi Sundowns iterated and became the diamond and became the chameleon football and became what Coach Manqoba wanted it to become in the last few months, you could always point to them knowing where this club has come from and understanding where this club has come from. But now the club is going to be taken over and run by a man who's got 2 years in as the sporting director at Mamelodi Sundowns, does not come from the culture of South African football, and now you'll be bringing on coaches that also don't have the same feel and flavor. What does it mean for the players? I think the one big thing that I would say this change helps with is the relationship between the players and the coach. We had long spoken about how those players don't feel Coach Manqoba. And in previous videos, I did allude to the fact that there was a clear divide that was made within the club when Rulani was there. So Coach Rulani and Coach Manqoba did not get along allegedly. And maybe you could see a clear divide between the players that Coach Rulani wanted, seeing Abu Chali get moved out, seeing Abu Onyango getting benched and all of that. And he built a really close-knit relationship with the players that he had on board already. Abu Williams, Abu Mokoena, and all those guys became Rulani men. And when Rulani left, you could see that maybe there was a little bit of friction between Manqoba and those players. So this coaching change kind of helps move that relationship over. I think it's more of a clean slate, and you don't have to deal with all of the history. It also means that Mamelodi Sundowns also doesn't have to deal with history, because with Coach Manqoba having been there for a very long time, you'd imagine that his voice carried a lot of weight. And Fleming having already gotten rid of somebody in Rulani who also had a lot of weight, and having to deal with a coach in Manqoba who might not be listening to him, was a move that was made. Getting rid of him was a move that was made in order to make sure that Fleming and management have a deeper voice when dealing with the club, and those people become employees and not people that have built the club and given the club success, right? Coach Carlo Ancelotti, in as much as Real Madrid loves him and all of that stuff, is not the keystone of the success of Real Madrid, for example. So Perez has a lot of say, which is something we're going to see at Mamelodi Sundowns going forward. What does this mean for the style of play? Coach Miguel apparently is a coach that loves transition football. He loves holding possession. And something that's really interesting, during his stay at Celta Vigo, the goalkeeper was a very important part of his play. So I think we're now starting to see the type of football that Fleming envisions for Mamelodi Sundowns. It's going to be faster. They're going to try and hold possession as much as possible. They're going to hit on transition. And they're going to be a more dangerous team, which I see as Coach Manqoba plus. So if this Coach Miguel comes in and he is able to implement some of the things he's implemented everywhere else, maybe we'll see a progression and we'll know that whatever Coach Manqoba was doing wasn't from the top of his mind and that it came from the club. What's interesting is that his record is not the best of records as a coach. So you might be sacrificing some of the elite winning that comes with the coach. But Coach Pitso, when he came into Sundowns, wasn't necessarily considered one of the best coaches. So maybe we can cut him some bail here and allow him to, some time to build the club. But again, being an international coach, being a foreigner, coming in after a successful time as a South African club is going to be a tricky thing that he has to work around. And I hope that he has this, the cojones, the steel, the strength of personality for him to go through this time. It's never nice being the coach that comes after a successful period. And I count Rulani, Coach Manqoba and Coach Pitso as the backbone of Mamelodi Sundowns' success. So they were still, in some cases, living off of what they had built. So now that that is broken, it's going to be a very interesting time. But the biggest part that I want to speak about, sorry to interrupt the video that I'm sure you're enjoying, but I just wanted to say thank you for all of the support that you guys have shown me and my Overthinking Football platform. I'm a one-man band that's doing all of this, and I really do enjoy the comments about how, Supersport needs to come fetch me and SABC and all of that stuff. And I think it speaks to the quality of the content, but also the amount of effort that I put in. So I just wanted to say thank you. But the truth is that Abo Supersport and all of those guys, yes, we're competing with them, but it's a completely different place. The sponsors are looking for former players, and to be honest with you, running some of these things is getting so difficult, and things have changed at home. So financially, it's a whole different world. So I wanted to try something new and come to the overthinkers, the people who watch the content, and say it would be incredible if you guys could contribute monthly towards the platform, towards keeping my lights on, but also making sure that all of the crazy things that I want to do, that I want to take Supersport on with, I can actually do. And just for 20 Rand every month, I think that would be an incredible contribution if you can make it. It may sound like a little, but if we can get a lot of people behind it, then we'll be able to carry on doing what I do. I'll be able to carry on giving you the content and also expanding it, because we don't have shows like this, and us content creators need help from our audiences. So I just came here to ask you if you can. Here is the account number that you guys can use in order to contribute. And I think, I'd be very grateful if you would. But anyway, let's get back to the video. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Is that man who Flemingberg, sporting director, the quiet man who's quietly changed a lot for Mamelodi Sundowns in the back. He changed the scouting. A lot of the scouts had been let go, and he's choosing rather to do the scouting himself and use apps like Transfer Room, which means that the scouting of South African players may take a dip, even though we still got some people who may be able to do that. And a focus on overseas players is going to be paramount, which means that Mamelodi Sundowns is probably going to be spending a lot of money going forward to bring in players, with the only thing holding them back being the foreign quota for the league. But if you look at them playing in the Champions League and things like that, they might be able to semi-balance that. He hasn't been the most successful with this with this international flavor. If we think about Abo Esquivel, Abo Matthias Esquivel, if you think about Abo Saavedra and players like that he's brought in, they haven't been success stories. Sales is still a question mark right now. So does this move mean that he'll be better at this? I don't know. Number two, if you look at the way they've looked at development, he's cut out M Tigers. So M Tigers is no longer part of your Mamelodi Sundowns. That was a place where you had the opportunity to send some of the players that are not green enough over to that side for them to get some competitive football. And they've actually given us some other really great players across the league that maybe didn't make it for Sundowns. It makes sense on when you look at it from the top to say that if you already have a DDC and you already have M Tigers, you're using two places and devoting resources to both sides of that. So that's going to be very interesting, because he's cut that. Maybe it's a saving. He said that for DDC, if by 1920 you're not ready to play for the club, you will never play for the club. So very, very harsh on that side of the game. But what interests me about Flemingberg, and of course these are my thoughts, these are not the truth, these are not things that you should take as gospel. I always thought that what he had done was give Coach Rulani enough rope to hang himself with. Give him enough rope for him to go out and, posture and want to be all that and create scenarios where you can get rid of him. So I believe that last season, when that statement came out and it said that Coach Rulani had not met the goals that the club had set for him in not winning the Champions League, in losing those 2 finals, I don't think he was let go for that, but it gave them a reason to do it. If you look at Coach Manqoba right now, having lost a final, having been knocked out of the other tournament, now with the 2 draws in the Champions League group stages, those things alone are not bad things. But you could put him in a place where there was a lot of talk from the supporters, a lot of negatives that were coming out of that time. So when he's moved on right now, there's a lot of Sundowns supporters and people around the club who may be rejoicing that Coach Manqoba is getting moved on. Remember, before Coach Manqoba took the reins as the head coach, his agent had come out and said that he wasn't going to be coaching anymore, but there was a new role that was being created for Manqoba as a long-serving coach. Coach Manqoba is a long-serving coach at the club, part of the success of the club, that maybe he was going to become a Trotmoloto type of advisor to the chairperson. Trotmoloto, of course, serves as an advisor to the president. Maybe Coach Manqoba was going to be moved there as a custodian, as the last person of this successful period. He was the last guy from that time. So it was expected that he was going to move into that place. Now he's gone, which means that Flemingberg has complete control of Mamelodi Sundowns. He's going to be running it as the SD, and I'd imagine that that's not necessarily a bad thing, in that you can't be trying to put your vision and your structures and your running of the club into the club when there's so many obstacles in the way. So I think he's played it very well. I think now we're going to be looking at him to be the guy as I don't want to say the sole runner of the club, but he's going to be the most important voice at Mamelodi Sundowns going forward. So we've seen some changes there. We've seen what he's going to do. So I'd just like to say, to end it off, Mamelodi Sundowns is going into the wilderness. This plays out either one of 3 ways. It's either Mamelodi Sundowns maintains where they are, perennial winners of the league, going into the Champions League and being one of the guys who are considered the big guys but struggling to get to a final. It can either go left and be the downfall of Mamelodi Sundowns, where they start becoming a team that changes coaches over and over and over again in search of this vision that they're chasing, that brings in players that may not be the best for Mamelodi Sundowns at the time, and maybe they might lose their culture in terms of Ishushan and piano, and it might be too big of a sacrifice that they've made in that point. Or, to be positive, it could be what takes the club into the future. Maybe what was holding Mamelodi Sundowns back was being family. Maybe what was holding Mamelodi Sundowns back was being loyal. Maybe they need to go into a more business-like place where they work and they win without emotions, without feelings. Maybe it is to become a corporation. I don't know of a coach that is tied to Ahly. Coach Kola has come back a few times, but there hasn't been a coach where you can point at and say, that was Ahly. Ahly is standing on its own. Whereas this Mamelodi Sundowns stayed with the remnants of Coach Pitso, stayed with the remnants of the coaches being bigger than the club. Whereas if you look at the big clubs in the world, the ones that have a long time heritage of success in things like continental competition, your Champions Leagues, right? Your Real Madrid, your Al-Ahlis, the club is bigger than everybody else. And if you don't do your job, you get moved out swiftly. So maybe this is the club becoming a modern day club. Now, what this means for South African football as a whole, I don't know. Will there still be the type of spaces there are for the great South African players or the really good South African players to arrive and be great? I don't know. I don't know if there'll be the type of time frames that will allow a coach to develop a player to becoming the top. You're going to have to start picking the top. And Mamelodi Sundowns, very early in Patrice Motsepe's reign, were chopping and changing players up and down, buying the best, and it wasn't working out until they found Coach Pitso. Can the sporting director be that man who takes them into the future going forward, right? That is one of the questions. The coaching side. And as much as Mamelodi Sundowns has spoken about how they were committed to South African coaches, they've only really had the three that have been at the top. They've only really had the three that have been the coaches that signify what South African football is. And Coach Pitso, of course, moved on to do great things. So I don't know if that is that much of a change in terms of South African coaches now becoming the best, because they've only really had Pitso and Coach Rulani in the 12 years. So that's going to be very interesting to see where Mamelodi Sundowns goes. Of course, we can't say too much right now. We have to look for the results. And Raja is going to be his first game in. Let's see what he can do on the continent, having been a coach that is being brought in for the continental games. Let's see what happens there. But very interesting times going forward for Mamelodi Sundowns. Coach Manqoba is probably going to land at a Golden Arrows, at a Richards Bay. He's probably going to go back to that type of football if I'm reading it right. That's where he's probably going to land. And I think he'll be much happier there, I believe, to be able to run his team without the expectation and the noise that's going to come there. No disrespect to Golden Arrows. But let's see what happens going forward. That has been the emergency news from Mamelodi Sundowns. See you guys for the live show. Bye, everyone.